There was a lynch mob that came before a judge who accused them of hanging a man without a fair and objective trial. "Oh, Your Honor," the leader said, "we listened very fairly and objectively to every word he had to say. Then we hung the son of a bitch." I wanted to maintain my objectivity, but Mother Miriam couldn't believe that. There was no way she could have known about Marie, but she must have suspected something. Marie was my younger sister, who decided she had a vocation to the convent when she was 15. So my mother sent her off without a second thought, and I never saw her again. I received a message late one night that Marie had died of acute and untreated appendicitis because her mother superior wouldn't send her to a hospital. Well, no, I guess at heart I couldn't be very fair and objective now, could I? But I tried. I remember waiting to view Marie's body in a little convent room and staring at those spotless walls and floors and thinking, my God, what a metaphor for their minds. And that's when I realized that my religion, my Christ, is this: the mind. Everything I do not understand in the world is contained in these few cubic inches. Within this shell of skin and bone and blood, I have the secret to absolutely everything. I look at a tree and I think, isn't it wonderful that I have created something so green? God isn't out there. He's in here. God is you. Or rather, you are God. Mother Miriam couldn't understand that part, of course. She reminded me so much of my own mother. And as for Agnes, just hearing her voice.
Welcome to Theater Beat. And Nessa, what is going on here?
We had a set explosion. Yeah, we have some costumers here who brought lots of goodies for us to look at and explore and discuss, and I'm really excited to have them on the show.
Goodies to eat?
No, just morsels for your brain.
Oh, all right. Well, it is a feast for the eyes, that's for sure. Our set looks fantastic, and I'm happy to see it.
I'm really excited.
And, well, let's get on with the show. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Welcome back. We're here with Mary McVey and Jenna Carlson. They're two costumers in the area, and they're going to tell us a little bit about what they do. So what got you guys started in costuming?
Well, I've been sewing since I was 7. My mom started me very early on sewing machine, and actually, it's just something I love to do. I like creating new things. I like things with a bit of a challenge, and when I got involved in theater costuming, it was great.
Jenna?
I'm the kind of kid that my parents let walk around the mall in the Tinkerbell outfit when I was little. And I always liked wearing that kind of stuff. And living in this area before the internet really took off was harder. So I did a lot of theater in high school, and I got into costuming there. And then I studied it in college, and I'm addicted, so I kept going.
Do you guys make your own clothes? Do you ever just make outfits for yourself?
Once in a while, not as much as I make costumes, probably because I'm too busy making costumes for other people.
Yeah, you guys are busy.
Yeah, same with me. I've got some skirts that I've made that I really, really like, but yeah, spend way more time on my second hobby.
How many hours do you spend costuming weekly?
During a project?
Yeah.
All the time.
Every waking second?
Not during a project. Not at all.
Oh.
So it's spurts with me.
Yeah.
It depends on what shows are going on, how many shows, are going on at the same time.
Yeah, because you had 2 at the same time.
3 at the same time. So that basically takes every moment 24/7 outside of, a regular work day.
Right.
But right now with the summertime and everything, I've got about 2 months of downtime. And I just got commissioned for a costume that needs to be ready by October 1st. So when I get back from my vacation in August, I will be full-blown back into gear, because then the theater season will begin back up, and I've already committed to 3 shows
Holy smokes.
between now and May. So it'll
Wow,
be
so you guys
busy.
definitely keep busy. Well, let's talk about costumes.
All right.
When you do a costume for a show, do you design from a pattern? Do you look for pre-made costumes, or do you generally just go from scratch?
It depends what I'm making. Last year when we did Midsummer Night's Dream with steampunk, the humans were dressed more traditionally Victorian. We used some patterns with that. We borrowed some pieces for that. And then with the fairies, we were pretty much going with whatever fit the person and the character. And this was from one of those last year. That was Peas Blossom. So we were basically designing those from scratch.
Very cool, very cool.
Yeah, it depends on the show and what the director is looking for. Obviously, for time management wise, if you can find something that will work and that you could just quickly alter, you know, that tends to work out really well. But then, you know, if not, then you need to go into the more creative mode in designing, especially if there's several outfits that they want matching. You know, like when I did Pinafore and they wanted like all the ladies in same but different outfits. So it really depends on what the director is looking for. But ideally, if you can find something that's already pre-made, that makes your time and your work much better.
Right.
But when it does come to creativity, I will tend to lean towards looking at patterns first. And then if it's something I can adapt to without actually physically using the pattern, I will tend to do that. But I generally use patterns as guidelines, but I don't necessarily always use them in my creations.
What about reusing costumes that you've already done? I mean, is there a way, and with different shapes of people and scenes and different things that you need for each costume, is there a way to reuse costumes you've already made and make them work with another show?
Absolutely. Generally, when you're working with a costume, something I had to learn the difference between costuming and sewing is that costuming can be more quickly adjusted. So if you're making a dress for somebody, it can be more of a generic size and then quickly taken in with base stitches. And then say the next show you want to use that dress for somebody else who's a little larger, then you just take out the base stitching and adjust it accordingly.
So it's not like making a regular outfit that is made to last. This is something that you...
They're always making adjustments too.
Yeah, and theater outfits, you have to make them durable. Because, no offense to actors, they can break anything. And so
you have to do a lot on the stage.
Yes. It's not always their fault, just sometimes. So you have to make it very durable. You can't make it flimsy, but you have to make it able to be adjusted for a different show, because no theater group has that much money.
Right.
And you have to, usually what I like to do, except if I'm making something really unique, I like to make something that's a base that I can put stuff on top of.
Right.
That works for multiple periods. You know, because that's a lot easier for you in the future, especially if you just had to make it for this show. You can reuse it later, because there's always a lot to do.
So how do you go about choosing the pieces for a costume, the fabrics and everything, and how do you keep it in budget? I mean, is there a trick that you generally follow, or?
It's called research. Time-consuming research, at least for me.
And thrift shops.
And thrift
Thrift shops are a wonderful, wonderful asset when it comes to trying to stick within budget.
Just for the fabric or for actual?
For actual.
For actual pieces. Fabrics aren't always necessarily a key factor, because one of the things that you need to keep in mind is when you're looking at something on stage, you're creating an illusion. So as long as you can find something basic that looks similar, you know, like sometimes if you're looking for like a plain dress and you have something with just like a little teeny tiny print on it, but you're looking so far back from it that it's still going to look like it's a solid dress. So on top of the fabric that you're going to use, depending on what you're creating, you're also creating a power of illusion in what you're making and what you're looking at.
Where I actually have an opposite problem, at least with the Pulteney Shakespeare company.
Right, because they get so close to the
We
audience.
don't have any distance. So
Oh.
I have to make stuff like you're filming it almost, because the audience, like they're sometimes
Right
literally
there.
sitting on the audience's laps.
And sometimes the audience is on stage with you.
And sometimes the audience is on stage with you.
Never
So,
know what you're gonna
yeah, I was actually bemoaning the fact, because when I went to Castleton, I was, doing stuff for them. There was distance, and that's how. And same with my high school. There's distance, and then I went into Pulteney, and it's like, by the way,
Right
Yeah,
here.
you can't.
really close.
Yeah, you can't fudge the stitching. You can't
Right.
do this stuff.
You have
and
to use pieces like this.
I have to use pieces like this.
Yeah.
And so I have to actually be pretty careful when I'm picking stuff, because something that might work at a distance, I can't. But I still have to have it work with stage lights. So I can't do it like I'd do if I was designing for fashion. So it's like one of these weird balancing acts.
How does fashion play into the costumes? I mean, even with a time period show, do you still use some modern fashion to make it appealing to today's audiences, or does it really apply?
Yes and no. One of the biggest things to play with on fashion and crossing it across the borders is basically collar styles or lengths of skirts, or whether something has a pleat or not in it. So sometimes you can transition, like I've done shows where I've had button-up blouses on all the women, but I tucked all the collars inside because, collars were not period at that point in time. So sometimes there are little tricks and things like that you can do that gives you some leeway with modern to more of a period piece.
Yeah, I alter a lot of modern stuff to put it in period pieces, like she was talking about. But as for incorporating modern fashion into, you kind of can, like when we did steampunk last year. Mainly we did it because I've gone to steampunk conventions. I really like the aesthetic. But it was also...
Can you explain steampunk in case there's some viewers who don't know what that is?
Steampunk is... past is future. It is taking Victorian technology and kind of bringing it forward. Like if we did not have electricity, we stayed with steam power. So it's very anachronistic and fun, and it's really a Victorian aesthetic with lots of gears and goggles and anything that would go with steam technology.
Okay. Very cool.
And because steampunk type stuff came into fashion last year as well, so that brought you can incorporate what's going on, especially with Shakespeare, into. We're doing 1920s Comedy of Error this year, and The Great Gatsby came out in theaters earlier this year. So,
Right. So that's helpful.
yeah, there's themes you can bring in with what's going on now, but as for modern fashion, unless it really fits because My Fair Lady done in jeans just wouldn't be right.
No, not at all.
You're going to have to stick to.
You need the long
Some
dresses and the
guidelines.
parasols
And the very
and the
big
hats.
hats.
Now, and I heard somewhere that the color that a character is wearing can mean something about that character's personality. How do you work with color schemes with the characters and with the play, and how do you tie it all together and sort of draw the eye and get that reaction?
I'm obsessed with colors and colors going together. I always see the characters as individuals, but then I look at them all as a whole too, because especially if they're going to be on stage together a lot, you have to see. But I'll use, for example, this lovely red dress behind us is for the courtesan Comedy of Errors. Her theme for that character is loud. She's got this bright red hair. She's got the bright red dress. She's got a big feather boa. She's got all this stuff, which I wouldn't put on a character like you're playing Adriana or Luciana, because there's, no, I know, or your sister Luciana, because you're well-bred, wealthy ladies, and even though you get into shenanigans, you wouldn't be wearing bright red and a big feather boa and really loud things.
The colors definitely play into giving the theme and the mood of a stage production. Like recently I did Crucible, and everyone would think Crucible is like, oh my gosh, it's going to be all black and white, and how do you get around that? I actually put all the girls in muted toned colors. So it wasn't anything bright and flashy, but it was still within the period. And believe it or not, they actually did wear colored clothes back in those days. It wasn't everybody. It was more of the pure puritanicals that wore the black and whites. And you know, you don't want somebody in a bright, flashy red and somebody in a muted pastel green. You know, you kind of want to run either all pastels and mutes or everybody in brights. But like with the Crucible, obviously you wanted all muted tones. The main character, I actually put her in a burgundy colored dress, kind of giving her like the Hester Prynne feel, but not quite.
Was that to sort of upplay her
role?
Yes,
was I kind of really did that on purpose. And I actually got teased because Mary Warren was wearing the lavender dress, and I had a friend of mine who was like, well, you're playing up the innocence bit just a little bit, aren't you? So, you know, you got, and, you know, characters who wear purple. You know, purple is supposed to be a vision of death.
Oh.
Which was something I recently learned. So purple costuming, you know, kind of puts an air of gloom around that particular character.
Really?
You know?
I never would have.
Yeah, and pinks, you know, are more of an innocent color, and so, you know, blues, the calming, and, you know, so color definitely plays a really big part in all of that.
Do you guys work pretty closely with props people and set design to kind of make it all tied together, or?
It depends on the production. When I was a director for the high school, I ended up being all of these people, so yes.
Right.
So, you know, the visuals were always very tight-knit, and some productions don't really have much set, so the costumes are the set dressing,
Right.
Which is mostly the case with the Pulteney Company.
Right.
And then some companies have really elaborate sets, like when I was in a play, Aida, done by In One Productions like several years ago, and the sets were just gorgeous.
Super flashy.
And so, yeah, I think it depends on which production you're doing, what the theme of the production is, whether it needs to be so close-knit that you need to have production meetings, or if everyone's just kind of told to do their own thing.
Yeah, I don't think, I really don't have a lot to do with the whole set. I'm sure the colors come into play somewhere in the planning and the scheming, but is not something that is really brought up in my end of things. As far as props, it's kind of my job or the director's job to get together with the props person and decide, okay, what is actually props and what is actually part of a costume. You know, because, you know, like a nightstick for a police officer, you would think, oh, well, that's part of the police officer's outfit. But then again, you know, realistically, that's a prop. So it's, you know, kind of a thin line sometime, and you just need to really keep open the line of communication. So it's like all of a sudden you get to show date, and it's like, wait a minute, I thought that was your job. Oh, I thought that was your job. So, you know, you definitely really need to keep open the lines of communications as far as props. And as far as sets, I'm pretty sure, like I said, the colors take a key place. And once you get a character in costume, and I think we actually had to change the color of a couch throw once or something because the character was blending right into the couch. But, you know, they changed the couch cover. They didn't make me change the costume. So, you know.
Yeah.
Are there any costumes that or pieces that you're proud of and want to show off to our viewers? Besides, Jenna dressed me today.
Well, the headdress I'm wearing I was actually really proud of last year because it stayed on Puck's head. We made it for Midsummer last year. We did steampunk, but with the fairies I went a little bit more tribal with. So they had a lot of, especially since our director cast Puck as more of a dark kind of character. Our fairies were more elemental and less fluffy. So we had a lot of tattered clothes and feathers and bone and this ring, I probably can't see it, but I've got a little bird skull on it too. And so I'm actually really proud of this because this took a lot of engineering to figure out how to get it and
keep it functional.
Yeah, to keep it. on her head.
Mary, do you have anything you want to show off?
Actually, I have a couple things. The belly dance top behind you, I actually hand sewed all of that. I was really into the belly dancing a couple years ago, and I hand sewed and designed that whole piece. So I'm pretty proud of that. I'll wear it again someday, I promise. The other thing I have down here, I can't quite reach it. Can I get down?
Sure.
Again, going back to the crucible, I had a couple gentlemen with very large feet that I just had a very, very hard time finding boots for. And so, like 2 days, less than 24 hours before opening, I whipped together a couple pairs of leather wraparound
I was so impressed by
boots.
this.
So basically, they're early period, just easy wraparound, tie-on boots, and they seem to be the big hit with everybody because I whipped them up so
Fascinated. It
so
was like
quickly.
last minute, and then all of a sudden there were boots, and they were just, came out of thin air to be, and it was great. So we have just a couple more minutes. Is there anything that you want to tell our viewers about how they could become a costumer, what they can do to get involved?
Lose your sanity. Step number 1.
Oh, you have to lose it first, or do you lose it during?
Well, if you have any left, it leaves quick. Well, if you just really enjoy, working with clothes, and especially working with fun clothes, not just the everyday clothes. I talked to one of your local community theaters. They're usually always looking for someone to help with anything, everything.
Yeah,
So
desperately.
especially if you can start off as an assistant or something.
Yeah, that's generally the best way. Or if you have family members or children who get involved. I mean, that was actually how I got involved at Dorset. Was I took my daughter to audition for Joseph, and I was like, oh, by the way, I know how to sew if you need any help. And here I am.
Here you
Those are dangerous words.
Yeah,
I can
infamous last
sew.
words. I can sew. But no, I enjoyed immensely. Love doing the creating. But yeah, check out your local theaters. Go to auditions. Just step up and say, hey, I like to sew. Is there anything I can do? And
Please.
A good volunteer is always welcome.
Always.
Well, thank you guys for being on our show. I really appreciate it. I love our set. The ladies made these. It looks fantastic. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, what an awesome interview that was. Thank you, Nessa, so much.
We just feasted on a lot of information.
Yeah, I couldn't get over the fact that besides the work they do with the sewing, they do get a little bit from thrift shops, Goodwills.
They do. Anything that you guys want to help donate to the local community theaters would be fantastic. That would save them the trip. A lot of work goes into behind the scenes on a show you wouldn't even imagine. So anything that you can give would be appreciated.
Yeah, so please support
Time.
your local theaters. And remember, the Berkshires don't stop at the border. There's plenty of good art up here in Vermont. And, please come up and give our theaters a good look, okay? Thank you, Nessa.
Thank you, and thank you for joining us.
A man is with a woman, as Patsy seems to be with you. He meets his best friend on the street, introduces him to the mystery woman. The woman already has some semblance of knowledge concerning the aforementioned best friend, that he's a real interesting guy. Perhaps there's some initial chemistry between the two people. Perhaps it's so hidden, so buried that neither one even recognizes its presence. Perhaps these two newly introduced members of our societal jungle will bid each other farewell after only moments of introductory chit-chat, only to spend the rest of the day and the following day, and who knows how many days after that, burdened by the sexual magnetism that makes two people prisoners of passion. Usually, few days the fire burns out. What remains are ashes of what might have been. There are rare occasions, however, as history is documented, where these two benighted and tortured souls have to find each other, seek each other out, track each other to the earth's end, because there is no other choice. It's just food for thought.
Wow.